Hey everyone, welcome to the Got 10 Minutes podcast, the podcast for product teams brought to you by Samelogic.com, the social product research network to get amazing ideas from anyone and anywhere. Today we speak with Johnny Bilotta, who is the VP of product at Chain.io. Hey Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dwayne. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So you've had like an incredibly diverse and successful career over the last 25 or so years in the realm of like digital product design and experience and across multiple sectors as well. So as we get started, could you share with us the story of your professional journey and how did it all begin and what were some pivotal moments that led you to your current role as a VP of product at Chain.io?
Yes, well, thanks again for having me here. As far as how I got started, the most pivotal point was when my father brought home a computer when I was about 9 years old. I was privileged enough to live in a house with an entrepreneur who saw computers as the future and a tool that allowed him to do the work of about 10 people for his job, with just one. And I couldn't be torn away from it because I had at that point had Atari and video games, and I wanted to learn more, and entered in the school computer club. We had Commodore PETs at the time. They ran programs off of cassette tapes and over 5-inch floppy disks and things like that. So, this is going way back, but that was a pivotal point for me because it introduced me to a new trade, which was technology, which was computer programming, software, hardware, something that I didn't know was as accessible as it was. And because I was a sci-fi fan too, I took to it like fish to water. So I continued to program when being young, learned how to, program BASIC, and then eventually Python, and learned Linux operating system, Windows operating system as the years went on. And I was making money as a high schooler doing drafting the AutoCAD. My father was an architectural consultant, so we had AutoCAD in our house. So I would draw these electrical schematics, and I took to it very well. So everybody directed me to engineering. But I found out that my way of learning was very hands-on, and the beginning of engineering was very scholastic, very academic, a lot of math and theory. And I found that I wanted to dive right in. So I went to art school for industrial design instead and started studying product design. And I really wanted to be a sports equipment designer, like a product designer, building mountain bikes to skateboards, surfboards, designing snowboards and things like that, soccer equipment, cleats, shin pads, things like that. So I was an athlete myself and really took to it. And as I got more and more into it, I ended up doing a job for Nike when I was working for my godfather's firm as an advertising intern, and here in Philadelphia. And they kind of gave me the choice there and said, "Hey, you're very talented. Do you want to stay in school, or do you want to work, in advertising and learn the business?" And they offered me a nice salary, and I said, "Well, yes, I'll take the job." So I did, and from there I started building websites, and that led to mobile stuff when the iPhones came out, and then desktop applications. So it kind of all got started with that one computer back in the day, and allowed me to couple my design skills with my software development skills, and ended me up in the early aughts and the teens of the 2000s with a pretty good amount of experience in building products within the technological space.
Mm. Oh wow, that's a very very interesting background. Very a lot of multidisciplinary things happening there. So having worked in like diverse sectors, and also like noticed that you've worked a bit in healthcare and like probably a bit in finance space as well.
Mm-hmm.
What are some unique insights or principles that you've gained that you apply to your current role at Chain.io?
Yeah, well, you stay in software game long enough, you tend to find that a lot of software is the same. You're solving the same problem just in a different industry, right? With different variables within the equation. And something I've learned is that each industry has certain variables that are unique to that industry. So I'll give you an example. In finance, in fintech, a lot of fintech startups that don't have financial experience, or at least people who don't have experience building software within financial arena, forget that there's a reason why when you log into your bank doesn't use your email address as a login field, because it's very easy to guess an email address, and if you guess an email address, you're halfway there to cracking an account. So the usernames are often used, and you have to use numbers sometimes in them because it makes it more secure. It's a classic mistake that's made by a lot of startups who want to get into the financial game that have never written software in finances, and they start everything with an email, and they keep on going and going and going, and next thing you know, they're 3 years in and they got to change their whole setup, and it's expensive. So that's a unique thing that you pick up along the way, that you sometimes, as a UI designer, as a product designer in this space, you wouldn't know unless someone sort of showed it to you beforehand. And there's what I'm doing now at Chain, which is logistics and supply chain software, is a lot of change management in a product company that was building its product based off of professional services and bespoke solutions for their particular customers. My previous position to this, I was with a company called myClin, and we did the storage, auditing, and transmission of data that is going back and forth to all the parties within phase 2A, phase 2B clinical trials, which are human-based trials. And it's funny that the problems are very similar, even though they're very different industries. In Chain, we sort of get siloed into, an EDI type product sometimes, or a transit management system product, when actually we're a transformative data product. But because we offer, a wide range of solutions, we kind of get siloed into all these things. It makes it easier for people to silo. At myClin, it was the same way. They would say, "Oh, you're a TMS," which is a trial master system, or I'm sorry, TMF, a trial master file. And we weren't that at all. But these are unique challenges that I think face certain software industries, but can be the same in both industries, even though those industries are very, far away from each other. Right now, the team at Chain.io and I are trying to pivot and make a nice split, and have a split with professional services, and have a model that also allows us to have customer-enabled software product, which we've been falling behind a little bit on, and trying more and more to do that, to make it more customer enabled, less training, more reliance on our support documentation, more reliance on our UI to lead the user to where they need to go, which is a huge challenge in every industry.
Wow. So you've mentioned that surprisingly that you wanted to design, sports equipment, snowboards
Mm-hmm.
and helmets and shin guards, different things like that, right?
Yeah.
How has that like helped with your concept of understanding like how to make products digitally ergonomic? You've mentioned that, the concept of digital ergonomics, and I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
wondering like how, that translates to the digital aspect of creating products.
Yeah. It actually, you get it to translate by using old non-digital practices. I still sketch. I mean, a lot of things start with a sketch. An idea starts with a sketch. And if it's an idea for a new feature that we have in our product, I sketch it out from 30,000 foot view, and it's just lines and boxes, right, representing where it needs to go. And a lot of times I use index cards because they're good for mobile size, right? You can build a whole interface with index cards and then line them all up, right, and switch them all around. And this view should go here, and that view should go there. So there was a person who was influential to me, or not, like in the middle of my career, I'd say, back in 2008, 2009, when Philadelphia tech scene was really blowing up. His name was Todd Zaki Warfel. I believe he teaches in San Francisco now, but he had this awesome idea of paper prototyping, and he really grasped on the need for designers to hold on to some of the traditional practices that we use, traditional ceremonies that we use in order to get to ideas,
Mm.
and start with those as talking points. Make the concept that you are verbalizing visually tangible to somebody, and then you can start seeing where the ergonomics start to break up, or how they won't work. and you're doing it without investing a lot of time in moving all the pixels around and making sure that this prototype is perfect, and you're just doing it with paper. So if you were designing a helmet, you would start with a sketch. If you were designing a water bottle, you start with a sketch, and then you refine that. I think that a lot of people in our industry, especially designers or product developers, are so, and I understand it happens. I even go right to code sometimes because I just know what needs to be done and I just go to it. But we bypass these traditional design studio practices that can make our products better, that can make us get to a solution to that digital ergonomic problem faster and with more collaboration from our peers than just waiting for me to have a perfect design wireframe and I'll share the whole thing with you later, team.
Mm. So as a veteran product designer, you must have experienced a lot of triumphs and a lot of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share like one or a few significant lessons that you've learned from past products or past projects that have helped you to this point today?
So I think the places where I failed the most, I'll start with some failures, and maybe I don't use them as failures. I kind of always like
Lessons.
yeah, they're lessons learned. I learned, right? I either won or I learned. Um, but some of the places that I did not do well is where I thought I was the smartest person in the room. And the more places where I sought out to be not the smartest person in the room, or change my attitude into being like, you're not the smartest person in this room, you're going to learn a lot. I found more success that way, less success with thinking that I was. And that was that's a humbling experience, I think, for anybody. And it happened earlier in my career when I probably was in a meeting with executives from Kimberly-Clark and I said the wrong thing. A very cocky 20-something-year-old, designer who made an art director pretty fast and thought he knew everything, but I got humbled, very quickly. So, those were moments of me realizing like, okay, I don't know everything. And sometimes I just need to keep my mouth shut. I also have become a better leader by being the person that's not talking in meetings, in design studios, even with my team. I like to roll. Some people have described it as I roll a grenade and wait to see what the explosion looks like. But as a designer, as a problem solver, which is the basic definition of what a designer is to me, you have to do that in order to get a reaction. And you cannot do proper research on what's wrong with certain things unless you get a reaction. Like I've told people, you want to get the right answer to something, go onto Reddit and give someone the wrong answer, and you'll get 150 responses on what everybody thinks the right answer is. And most of them will be similar, but some of them will be different. But you get better information with reactions than you do with just waiting for someone to come to you with feedback. So that to me was a big piece of learning experience that it took me a while to get, right? Because you're always trying to be the person. Well, I don't want to show that I don't know something. I actually loved making it seem like I don't know something because people just give me all the information they possibly can. Where if I think that they think I know it, well, then they're usually a little more conservative. So that's a big triumph. One of the biggest triumphs I think that I've had is the network that I've established. And I know this may sound a little strange, but the reason why I have the position I have right now is because I was let go of my previous position, which was a company called PHILANTHROPI, a great company, good product. Just difference of opinions with some of the people there, as happens in this industry. But in that, because I had a good network and I took the time to build my network, and I had a network that to me I worked with and worked at for years. Over the past 20 years, I had an interview the same day I got laid off. I had 4 interviews right after. And it's not a testament to my talent, but a testament to my network. And if anybody's going to take anything from this call, regardless of whether, or this podcast, this interview, it would be that the people that know you and the people that know that you do a good at what you do is more important than any position, any salary, any particular award you might win for tech disruptor of the year or whatever it is, because that will lead you to a much better career, much more rewarding career, and a much more secure feeling of your standing in the product development world.
Oh wow, that's a very, very strong point. I love that. You mentioned quite a few things there, but like earlier in the first couple of few things that you mentioned, you kind of like alluded to just testing things and also just making sure that you kind of you kind of get a reaction to understand what we're get your bearings right. So
Mm-hmm.
where that's concerned, like given like the dynamic nature of like user preferences, what users want, users needs, user feedback, how do you go about conducting experiments with users and also like user testing and to identify what products or product features or flows users prefer?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to conduct experiments on what users would like to see, what users prefer in terms of flow, there's a lot of things that I've done over the years. It depends on the user profile, depends on the industry. It actually also depends on the team that you have, because sometimes you don't have the time to do a full round of user testing. Sometimes you don't have the time to do user research in so much that you're getting focus groups together and letting them click through prototypes and doing A/B testing and things like that. Business doesn't move like that. However, we've done a few things in the past. We mostly use prototypes, put them in front of potential customers, walk them through a talkable demo, and then receive feedback from it. We'd also even have them sometimes, monitor them using a prototype, like how does this feel? How does this look? And in the pandemic, it would have been done, remotely. But when it wasn't in the pandemic and done remotely, I used to go to, when we would do UI audits, we would go and film the person doing their job using the piece of software that we were going to improve or replace, and sit there with them all day and just start the camera and be like, you're going to just act like I'm not here. And I would observe them and we'd see those patterns, right? Because people tend to, the muscle memory that they have is a good indicator of sometimes bad user patterns or good ones. In my current position, we practice continuous deployment and continuous improvement. And we usually figure out that there's a problem with the ergonomics almost immediately. And we try to eat our own dog food, as we like to say, right? Use your own product to solve a problem that you might not, it might not be used to solve, but at least use it to a point. I'm in our product every day, all day, using it, not for what our customers are using it for. I'm usually testing things and going through and finding flaws that I'm like, oh, this needs to be improved. So using your own product is a big one, because there's a lot of, I think that there are a lot of software product companies out there who have people within their company that don't even use their own product. And it's not an easy thing to do, right? If you work at Facebook, it becomes very easy to use Facebook, right? But if you're in our industry, like logistics and supply chain, no one in my team needs to use this to do their daily job. That's dangerous, because if they don't need to use it, then they don't see all the flaws in it. They see what they programmed, they see what they designed, they see what they developed. And to them, that could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. But to the end user, they're not able to, they might not be able to use it. And then the last thing we try to employ is good user feedback. So we do a couple things with that. One, we're currently, since I joined, we're incorporating user feedback directly into the application, where where a user can report bugs, give us feedback on a particular review, let us know what's going on. We're also going to implement possibly user statistic software like Pendo or something like that, so we can get a good idea of where users are breaking off of certain patterns, where they're dropping off in certain flows, to make sure that we're picking up those that loss of engagement and making it a little bit better. And lastly, we started a customer advisory board where we have a good mix of authority, those who are the purchasers, the people who are going to spend the money for our product, for their users, and then some of the power users. And we do that quarterly, and it's basically the beginning of it is us giving a state of the product and where we're going, but I try to keep that to a 10-minute section in a 45-minute meeting, so that's where we act more of a town hall with our customers and allow them to give us feedback on where we might be doing things wrong or might be doing things right. And I can't recommend it enough to have an oversight committee that is filled with your customers, because they'll, just like your board of directors, if you're a funded company, they'll keep you honest.
Oh wow. The digital space is always evolving. How do you keep updated with like the latest things happening in the industry, and how do you stay relevant? Like how do you make sure you're on top of things? That's one thing that I've kind of like noticed, that everyone kind of gets their own information from different sources. But I'd love to find out where you get your information from.
Reddit. I'm a
Mhm.
Redditor and use Reddit to get a lot of information, subscribe to most of the product development, the network security, anything that's technology based, like I'm usually on there, right? Though I still hit the Y Combinator, Hacker News stuff, on a daily basis. We have normal news channels like Flipboard, which I have, stuff set up for. And to be honest with you, listening to other members of my team, the younger members of my team. I mean, I'm 48 years old. I've been in the industry for quite some time, and I can't keep up with everything. I can't kid myself into thinking that I can, because so much happens. So I might just ask, like, what's the what's the latest and greatest? What's the newest thing? And in software, everybody kind of knows that there's always a new piece of JavaScript tool that everybody's like, oh, well, you got to use this thing. It's the next new hotness, right? And they said that about Angular, and they said it about React, and they're going to say it about the next thing, right? So, and staying on top of those things, I've been using. I can program React, but not as good as my senior guys, because they're on top of it. They do it every day. They're in there every day. So I got a problem. I ask them, what's new in this stuff? Should we be using Redux or not? Like, that's a question that I don't feel I have the authority to ask. So I go to them. Getting involved in the community too, your local tech community, and mentoring, it's also a great way to stay in touch with what's going on. Because if you're doing mentoring for others in the community, then they're teaching you as much as you're teaching them, because it's a symbiotic relationship, right? It's two-way. And I think that staying involved with your tech community, your local community, or even your online community is a good way to go. Finally, I am a internet involver. I get involved, and I am called. I was, when we started Indie Hall, the co-working space here in Philadelphia, I was labeled the first follower, and the first follower. I don't know if you know what the first follower initiative is, but basically, if you're in a crowded room and you're speaking and you ask the crowd, does anybody have any questions? No one has any questions till the first person has a question.
Mhm.
So I'm also, in terms of that, and in leading that back to this, I like to be a first follow into things that may seem uncomfortable. So I first follow into Discord servers. Discord has been, although it has had bad press in the past and can be toxic in certain areas, Discord and Twitch have been a fantastic resource of what's going on right now in the industry from minds that are much younger than mine. And it just has to be found. You have to find it. And it may feel like you may be the only person at your company that will do it, but I promise you, if you're the first follower into something like that, the information you get is going to be so good that other people will come flocking in.
So like I love this. I love getting all this information. I'm pretty sure like listeners love this as well. I ask everyone who comes on to the show this question, this one question. What's one weakness that you've turned into your strength?
Hmm. Yeah, this one took a minute. It's a good question. And, I'd can use I could be cliche and say I don't believe in weakness, right? Weakness is, to me, it's just a strength that you have yet to master. My muscles when I go to the gym, they were weaker than they were before I started going on a regular basis, right? And they developed and they got bigger and stronger because I practiced and I kept it up. It's why I'm not fond of the word, because it feels like it's just something you haven't got to master. But my biggest one are my emotions. I am and have always been a hypersensitive, possibly labeled overly sensitive person. And as a designer, it became very difficult for me to take criticism on things when you are passionately believe that it is correct. And it's become my greatest strength because I learned to master some of my emotions for my benefit. And it helps me be more empathetic. I am emotionally triggered by intolerance and exclusion and prejudice, but that motivates my desires to be more open, to be more caring, to be more thoughtful about my work, to be more inclusive with my work. And it's also mastering it made me realize that the difference between an artist and a designer, I believe that they are both artistic applications, both artistic jobs. But a designer's work is not up for, it's not up for interpretation.
Mm.
If it is, you failed as a designer. An artist's work is up for interpretation. And once you realize that as a designer, you start to welcome the criticism. And because you realize that, one, you can't be a better designer without it. If even Dieter Rams was like criticized. So, I take that criticism and it may hurt sometimes. And I've been hurt a lot by it, from someone telling me something totally sucks to, I remember slaving hours over a particular project in school and having the instructor, as soon as I walked in, he threw it right in the trash, and he said, come back tomorrow with a better. Paul Audador was his name. I don't know if he's still around, but hopefully he listens to your podcast. But he said to me, you're more talented than this. I know you can do it better. Right. That screwed me up, man. I was started out feeling like I let somebody down and got disappointed, and I probably shed a tear because of it. But what did I do that night? I worked vigorously to improve it. And I came back, the next day with a more improved piece, and that's got me an A. Right. And it was a tough lesson to learn. So if anyone shares that same weakness, I would say to them, embrace it, find ways to master it and make it a strength, to work on it, to work it out to the point where it becomes stronger for you than it is against you.
Wow. I really love this. You've been having like zinger after zinger. That's amazing.
Good. I'm glad.
So lastly,
Mhm.
uh, you've received notable recognition for your work,
Mhm.
including a Macworld Award and being named a tech disruptor. Uh, what advice would you give to aspiring product managers or designers or anyone in this field, who's hoping to make a similar impact?
Have a lot of empathy. Empathy leads to good user experience, leads to good design. The fight against those dark patterns, big corporate, you're going to be asked to do them, but stand up against them. That's disruption. Disruption isn't following the same flow as everybody else. Disruption is going against it. And that going against means doing it in a manner that isn't negatively disrupting, but as having, or if it is negatively disrupting, it has to have positive impact. And it's very difficult to learn the difference between, or to figure out how that or when that's happening. And I can say that the advice I can give is be prepared to be slapped in the face with it going wrongly. I've been lucky enough to have associated myself with some good projects, picked some, like a good actor, I guess I picked some good roles. and that got me here. But that's also something that I believe an aspiring product developer or product designer should do is don't take the first thing that comes along. Don't work just for money, because money goes away real fast. It's what's in here and your mental health that really means everything. And if you start from a place of empathy, then you're going to be looking out for what's going on up here first, and less of what you're doing to make a dollar. You'll be more happy about it, in my opinion. So I know that can be a little bit of wishy-washy advice, but I think it's some of the best that was given to me a little bit too late in my career. I wish I had a little bit earlier. And yeah, I just say be as humble and as empathetic as you can.
Wow, I really love this episode. You touched on so many different topics, and all of them resonated with me. Thank you so much for joining us today, Johnny. I really enjoyed this episode, and I'm pretty sure our audience will too.
I hope so. It was a pleasure being here, Dwayne. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you for your time and your patience.
You're welcome. And thanks for listening to the Got 10 Minutes podcast. To stay in touch, please follow us on LinkedIn or the podcast app you're listening to this on right now for more episodes. Take care.